Hi, this is CEO Talks from Forbes Vietnam, where we dig into the unique stories of how some of the best known and most successful companies, innovators, and entrepreneurs came to be. And today I have a pleasure to meet with Mr. Alain Cany. Alain is no stranger to the business community in Vietnam, especially in the FDI scenes among the European countries. Alain was among the very first few people who saw tremendous opportunities and potentials Vietnam has to offer. And not only he saw it, but he took action before others. He has held many key roles in various organizations such as HSBC, Jardine Matheson, Vietnam Business Forum, and EuroCham. Today, we'll be focusing on his journey, the story, and the passion on running EuroCham. Thank you for being here today.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So you are the very few people who've been here in the 1980s. That was way before Vietnam, U.S. embargo was lifted in Vietnam. How was the experience?
Let's say I was a banker based in Hong Kong. I came here first as a tourist to Hanoi actually. For some reason I don't remember, and I fall in love with the scenery, everything, and I grew up in Madagascar myself for the first 10 years of my life, and really when I landed in Hanoi, going a little bit around, visiting the nice tourist spots, I felt I have been there before. It came to me, and I was there with my wife, and I told my wife, I really like this place. I feel home. It looks like maybe I was here in a previous life, but thinking about it, I think it was much more related to my
youth 40 years ago
in Madagascar. So this was actually my first trip was 1985. We went to Hanoi, Along Bay, a few things together with my wife, spent a week there. And I really went back to Hong Kong to say, I really definitely love this country. I'm going to pay more attention to it. I was pretty new in Hong Kong. I was in Hong Kong for a year. And that's the very beginning of my story to Vietnam. Then I had many opportunities to come back. I have created opportunities to come back. And finally, it took me maybe more than 15 years to establish myself here. But
well, you moved here quite full-time, permanently in the early 2000s. And quickly, you joined EuroCham in 2005, and you ran for several years as chairman, and 7 years. Yes. What was the role of EuroCham back then in 2005 when you joined? What were they doing?
Mostly gathering European companies together. Mm-hmm. We were not really very involved in advocacy, as we call it. Let's say in talking much with the government. At the time, we thought that it would be more the role of the European delegation, the EU delegation, to do it. But very rapidly, after a year or two, we discovered that it is really something that, because investment were growing, European investment were growing, and we were facing some difficulties in some sectors, or in some administrative issues. So many companies came to us and to me to say, look, we believe you should do it. You should be the voice of the European companies. And that's why we started to establish sector committees. At the moment, we have 18 sectors committees, and to issue position paper. Then when we had enough position paper, we start to issue a white book, which at the first year, I think the white book was a bit thick like this. And I remember one of the very first meetings I had with the government with the white book, I told them, look, it's pretty thick, but my goal is that within 5 years, we'll reduce it to 0. Unfortunately, today the book, 15 years later, the book is like this, which means that we have resolved a lot of issues,
right?
But we had also a lot of new issues.
As the business climate environment changed.
Yeah.
So today you're running it, and you mentioned a bit about advocacy. For me and the audience, could you explain that in a simplest term possible? What does that mean?
Let's say it's having a dialogue with the government to try to improve the business environment. Of course, as a representative of the European businesses, our goal is for this to benefit European companies, but in fact, it benefits everyone. And probably the very first one to benefit are the Vietnamese companies. At the very beginning, when we started to do this advocacy, I remember even the chairman of the VCCI was telling me, Alain, I like what you are doing, and we cannot make the same request ourselves, okay? Because my job is a quasi-government type of job, I think. So he was even giving me some piece of paper to say, can you make this as part of your recommendation as well? Even it was not our concern as European companies,
right.
But I very remember, and very, very quickly, actually, our maybe second dialogue with the government, each year when we publish our white book, we request a meeting with the government at the highest level possible. So we have a minister, and then we have vice minister or director of 12 or 15 different ministries, which are relevant to the recommendation we were making, and we are still doing that. But that's advocacy. And the way EuroCham is doing it is that we of course, we are avoiding to criticize the government. And there is no point to tell them, in Europe, we do it this way, so you should do it this way. First of all, Europe and Vietnam are not at the same stage of development. And it's a bit arrogant for us to give lesson. So our approach is more to dialogue with the government and to take some example in neighboring countries, which are more or less at the same level of development. So sometimes telling them, look, in this sector, look at what Thailand is doing, like Malaysia is doing. So we believe that Vietnam should go in the same direction and do the same. And it worked pretty well when really they realized that neighboring countries, slightly more advanced than Vietnam in terms of opening the economy, were really moving in this direction. We immediately saw that the people we were facing from the government or sometime at the National Assembly, they were buying our arguments much better than telling them this is the way you should do it. Right. Let's say this was very much because we are not the only one doing advocacy. EuroCham is doing advocacy, and of course the Korean and the Japanese are pretty strong in doing that with very strong government support. The EuroCham is doing it also with very strong government support. The difference with European is that we have too many government, European government, and we don't have a real EU. We have a EU delegation here, which is more political, but which is not very much commercial or economics, because Europe is not a country. And that's why European companies rely much more on the European Chamber than maybe other countries, because we don't have a real embassy with a strong stance on the commercial or economic side.
It's interesting that you and EuroCham brought in examples of the neighboring countries to share so the government can learn. Well, what is it like working with the government, your experience so far? Are they receptive to change? Are they more collaborative? What was your experience like?
Very positive, frankly speaking. Even before I was sharing EuroCham, when first time I arrived here, I was the CEO of a large bank, HSBC, and I remember my very first meeting with the State Bank of Vietnam. At the time, there was even capital market was very, very new. Everything was new. There was, and I remember one of my first meeting, the deputy governor was sharing the meeting facing the foreign banks or a few foreign banks, telling us, but if you can help us even to draft the regulation or to draft the law, to draft a circular on this, because we have a few papers from the OECD, we have a few papers from consulting, whatever, but maybe your banks can help us with what is the best practice in your countries, and from then we can see what is the best for Vietnam. So it opened my eyes that even my previous experience was in Hong Kong or in France. So it was my very first assignment in a developing countries, and I found this extremely interesting approach from the government and very useful for us. And I start feeding the government with a lot of paper which I got from my head office, and they like it very much. And actually I start building up my relationship at a high level with the government, especially with the State Bank of Vietnam and a bit with the MOF, like this. And very quickly I had the reputation among the leaders of the country that I was someone willing to cooperate, willing to help. So it has actually benefited me very much when I become chairman of EuroCham. I had already a kind of, people knew me from my banking experience, and they were very receptive of what I was doing with EuroCham, probably because they knew that I was someone constructive, willing to help, rather than someone which is criticizing and asking for unreasonable things to happen. So, in the dialogue, you have to be two people. If you are only alone, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I have to really very sincerely praise the Vietnamese government for his attitude, always listening to us. Of course, they don't buy everything. Sometimes it takes years to get something to be changed, because sometimes even at the central government you feel that they sympathize, or at the National Assembly, and then when you go down to the local government or provincial government, it's a very different story. The central custom department may tell you one story, and then when you go back to your work and you discuss with the Ho Chi Minh City custom, they have a different interpretation. So that's probably more difficult. But in general, I think Vietnam has made a lot of progress, and despite the fact that I think our white book is too thick today, we have managed to resolve quite a lot of issues, which today is the main reason for Vietnam to attract more foreign direct investment from all over the world, and probably also was helping the government to move forward, signing a free trade agreement with many countries, feeling comfortable in doing so. So it has been definitely a very interesting journey, and the dialogue still exists today. Let's say the big progress has been that even today we see the draft of the law ahead of the National Assembly. The government is circulating to the chambers and to us in particular, not all of them, but when it is relevant for businesses, we have a chance to review the draft. For example, the new labor code on the cyber security, we have a chance to review the draft, to comment the draft. Maybe not only once, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times before it is submitted to the National Assembly. Then after it is voted, you are right. I think it's the devil is always into the details, and implementation is the most difficult thing. And the law in Vietnam is not extremely precise. I think it is good because it is open for some good interpretation, but sometimes it also works against you, and sometimes the interpretation is not correct for some reason. I think it is less and less because now everything is computerized. They went very well digital, and it helped a lot because when it is digital, you have less interpretation, and you can prove that this good has been treated this way somewhere. But
so you have more evidence. Yeah, I think it's part of growing pains, but I think it's overall.
But of course, difficult for me to compare because I have been working in many countries in my career, but I always feel that Vietnam was extremely open-minded in a dialogue with businesses, and in particular with foreign businesses. and it has benefited a lot in the last 20 years, which I witnessed.
Good. Since your experience at having very close dialogue and open communication with the government, last year you joined the Prime Minister of Vietnam, Phạm Minh to the COP26 event. And at this event, the Prime Minister pledged Vietnam to commit to net zero carbon footprint by 2050. Mm-hmm. What were EuroCham role in that trip? What were your roles?
First, I was very honored to be invited as being part of this delegation. I believe the main reason I was invited in the delegation is not for the trip to Glasgow, but because after Glasgow, the Prime Minister was visiting France for a state visit. And I have been very involved in supporting the MPI and the government for organizing the Prime Minister to meet with the top French companies. They asked me the help. So initially, I believe they invited us for the Paris leg. But Glasgow was part of the trip, so I was not supposed to play a key role in Glasgow. But I was very lucky and very honored to be involved and to be part of, not the top meetings, but to be part of what was available for businesses.
Right.
And during this trip, I never met Prime Minister Chin before that trip, actually. We spoke because of COVID. We spoke a few times online. We had a lot of meetings, let's say not a lot, but 3 or 4 meetings online discussing on the COVID situation, how to handle it, and he was asking us the advice, but we never met physically. And I met him physically for the first time in Glasgow, even not in Vietnam. And thanks to, let's say, for being there, I was the only foreigner. And so I had the chance to have some, let's say, few minutes here and there, talking, chatting with the Prime Minister, thanks to the ambassador, the Vietnamese ambassador in the UK, who is a very good friend as well. After his strong commitment, actually we were on our way to Paris on the next day, and I congratulate him for this statement, and I even told him that as a Vietnamese, I felt extremely proud of his commitment. And joking a bit with him and say, what's your plan? Okay, big commitment, but what's your plan, Prime Minister? And he looked at me and said, I cannot do it alone. I need you to help me. And when he was addressing me, I need you to help me, he was not addressing me as Alain Cany, he was addressing me as a representative, as a foreigner. And he said, look, we need, this climate change is not only Vietnam, all countries are concerned and all countries have to make it together. And Vietnam's stage of development does not allow Vietnam to do it alone. So I need technology, access to technology, access to, at a good price, access to money, because we need a lot of money to finance this, also at a good price. So I really need you, as chairman of EuroCham, to pass the message and to help us. And that's why thinking, coming back to Vietnam after this trip to Glasgow and to Paris, together with the Prime Minister, I said, we have to do something. So what can we do? And we had a meeting here with the board of EuroCham, and we decided that we should really have a very clear direction on EuroCham action towards the green economy. And one of the very first things we should do is to have some events on this subject and to promote the green transition. And we thought we should do a big event where we will put together, showcase European technology and European big banks there, meeting with Vietnamese. And that's why we created this Green Economy Forum and Exhibition, which was held last week and was a tremendous success.
Congratulations. I think you pulled together a very successful event. Could you share more about what can the Vietnamese government or the Vietnamese business community do or should learn about the new wave, the new transition?
Let's say the last day was very interesting because on the last morning we had a student competition, and I saved about an hour or two to participate, to watch that, and it was really very refreshing to see what kind of ideas came out of these students, from Vietnamese students from various universities, on projects, on green projects. And I believe it's good that you have already the next gen to really pay attention to this. And it was not improvised. I believe my perception was that these people, of course, we have worked with them for the last 6 months, 7 months, but they were very well prepared and pretty sincere. I still remember one or two of these young boys and girls presenting their projects. You can feel from your heart that there was a lot of sincerity behind. And I believe this is where the government should start. It takes 20 years to change people's behavior, right. Attitude towards green, and I still, every day I still see people in the street or even from their car throwing away some plastic or something. So I think some action, it doesn't cost much, but I have already recommended to the ministries that they should do something at school to start teaching people about the change of behavior and attitude towards, mostly on the pollution side, for example. Vietnam is one of I think is unfortunately ranking number 4 in the world for plastic in the sea. And I think all of us, when you go to these beautiful beaches of Vietnam, unfortunately you see a bit too many plastic cups or plastic bags. So I think education will be very important at all levels, probably from kindergarten to secondary and university. Also using the TV channel. I think Vietnamese spend a lot of time on TV, especially watching football. I think when they watch football, they should always have an ad or a minute or two on this thing. It's very important. I think we have, let's say, in Europe, it had a big impact. I remember before coming here, even 30 years ago, started to have some sport and a recommendation to select your cabbage or to use this rather than this, and changing the behavior of people. We should start now rather than later. Very, very important. And then when they will become adult, they will have the right attitude. They will try to buy the right car, an EV or whatever, or pay attention to a few things. So I believe, of course, it is each parent's responsibility as well, all of us. But I think the state, the government should really put in place this type of advertisement.
I share the same sentiment that my nieces and nephews, they go to international schools here. Yeah. So international schools, they do have quite a lot of exposure in terms of educating the young generation. I do believe that, like what you share, if we started implementing, the local government implementing that at school at a small age, I think one small thing is like stop littering around the beach or in rural area. I think that helps significantly. Not just about energy, but I think it's a much greener community to live in.
At zero cost.
At zero cost, exactly. Yes. You mentioned earlier when you met with the Prime Minister, Phạm Minh Chính, in Europe, and you said as Vietnamese, you're very proud of such development. You are among very few people in Vietnam that became Vietnamese citizen. How has that come about, and how does it make you feel? And why did you want to become a Vietnamese citizen?
Let's say I was given an award because let's say people believe I have done something good for the country. So back 13 years ago, I think President Triet gave me an award for my accomplishment as part of EuroCham activity as well, for supporting Vietnamese economy and develop bilateral exchanges with Europe. So, and with this award, which is called the Friendship Medal, I have the option to become Vietnamese without restrictions. So it was when I read the rule of the award, I can become a permanent resident, or I can eventually apply for becoming Vietnamese. So it's not an easy decision. I didn't want just to take it to say, oh, it's going to be good for my business. I can be Vietnamese, so I don't need to apply for a work permit, for example, or whatever. So it's I really wanted to make it with sincerity. So I discuss it with my friends. I discuss it with my wife, pro and con. Should I do it? Not. And I knew that let's say I want to stay in this country till the end. So one day I wake up and I say, I'm ready. I'm going to apply. And then I went through the process to get my passport and then my ID card. I did not ask for voting yet, but I may. And I feel, I really feel it. I have been in this country now 20 years. It's my home for 20 years. And I feel I'm still very French. And one of my conditions was to tell the authorities that I will be very pleased to become Vietnamese, but I want to keep my French passport because I'm a French native. It's my roots. But I feel Vietnamese. My only regret is that I don't speak Vietnamese. I can probably impress someone who doesn't know Vietnam for a few seconds or a few minutes, but I'm not able really to work in Vietnamese. I'm not able even to express myself in Vietnamese. So it's my only regret. But it's a bit late at my age to learn a new language. I'm still struggling sometimes with my English language as well. So I think it's okay. But that's my only regret. But I feel very proud. I'm probably sometime I'm telling my Vietnamese friends that I am more Vietnamese than them. I feel I'm a more responsible citizen than they feel themselves. My Vietnamese friends sometimes they say, "Oh, I would like to have a foreign passport." I say, "Why do you want a foreign passport?" I'm applying for a Vietnamese passport. You should be proud to be Vietnamese as well. Anyway.
So after being here for more than 20 years, what is one thing that you wish to see is a change for Vietnam?
For me, retirement.
Yes.
For me, I think I should think about retirement and enjoying the beautiful beaches here. No, back to the main subject. I think Vietnam should continue to open the country much more. Let's say we have a trade agreement with almost the whole world, which is fantastic. As we discussed earlier, implementation is the key. Yeah. I think we really need to make sure that when a decision is taken, it is being implemented pretty quickly. I think we are still in a country where the bureaucracy is too heavy. We have been fighting with this in Europe for 50 years. I think this is something probably that the Vietnam administration has inherited from the French administration. So it's a very bad example. But I think if I would like one thing to be improved and to be changed, I think is to reduce the bureaucracy and to make things much simpler for an investor, for a citizen. I think digitalization, it is also something the Prime Minister and his government is really pushing very much at the moment. I believe it's the right thing because with digitalization, you will reduce wrongdoing and you will speed up the process. So I believe this is the right direction. Vietnam, and for a young country like Vietnam, with its very young population, I'm always impressed to see how these young Vietnamese are so good in mathematics, in chess, in everything which is scientific. I believe we are gifted here in Vietnam to have these young people, to have this ability. So digitalization, Vietnam could be a leader in digital. I think we are, of course, far behind India, for example, at the moment, because they started some time ago. But I think Vietnam has a big card to play to attract manufacture technology and to use his great young manpower to develop digital. And I think with a good digitalization scheme within the country at the state level and at the private level, good policy and regulation for moving towards the green transition. If we can do that in the coming 5-10 years, I believe Vietnam has the best chance to be among the winner.
It didn't seem like you're thinking about retirement. This is going to take a while.
It's going to take, let's say, I probably working is the only thing I know. I'm a bad golfer. I'm a bad gardener. I think my wife will get divorced if I stay home the whole day. So I think I should continue to work a little bit, but maybe a bit less.
But such a high level of commitment and love, why do you do what you do today, coming back to EuroCham the second time, even, and very committed?
I don't know, frankly speaking, to be frank with you. It's probably part of my gene. Even at university, I was always taking responsibility of leading a class for something and doing some initiative. So I always paid very much attention to my community. I don't know, it's probably from my education, what I can do beside my work to bring something to the community. So that's why I always been involved, for example, in all the countries. I always been sharing the Chamber of Commerce or the international school or anything which I believe I can help to bring to the community. Of course, in Vietnam is a bit different because I really developed a passion for the country, and through what I was doing with the Chamber of Commerce and other things. Maybe we didn't discuss it, but I was very involved in a charity development. I have been developing and sharing for 20 years Saigon Children Charity, which is one of the very, very important and good charity here in Vietnam, taking care of children, poor children, and giving them some education, and after education, finding a job to them. So this also, I do it by passion. My wife and I, we have been very involved in developing Saigon Children Charity here in the last 20 years. It's something I like to do. Some people are passionate about sports or golf. My fun is to do something for the community. And on top of that, developing such a passion for the country. I really, sometimes I astonish myself because I'm a very busy businessman. I'm running a big group with big investment here in this country, very high responsibility, and I'm wondering how I can manage time to do something else. Maybe I'm lucky because I can live well with only 3 or 4 hours of sleep. But it's when you have the passion in something, sky is the limit. You don't count your efforts, you don't count your time, and that's the secret.
That's a wonderful advice for a lot of young entrepreneurs here. Well, Mr. Cany, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for all the work you've done with EuroCham.
Thank you, Kong. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.